Okay, so today we're going to look at some problems around normal distribution. I'm going to make this a little smaller so you can see both the problems and my work. Okay, so use this information for questions 5 through 8. Prices of condominiums in a certain city are approximately normally distributed with a mean of about $100,000 and a standard deviation of about $10,000. Okay, so anytime I see something with approximately normally distributed, the first thing I want to do is I want to draw a picture of this bell curve of my normal distribution. I'm going to try to draw it as neatly as possible. Okay, so I'm going to actually go through and sketch my mean in and then my standard deviation. So 100,000, so I'm going to write that as 100K. And then my first standard deviation below, so my standard deviation is $10,000, which means this would be 90,000, this would be 110,000, this is 120,000, and this is 80,000. So that's 2 standard deviations. 3 standard deviations would be 70 and 130,000. So now, if I remember correctly here, I have 34, 34, 13.5, 13.5, and it was 2.35. And these are my percents here. Okay, so my first question says, approximately what proportion of the condominiums have a value less than $90,000? So 90,000 is 1 standard deviation, so I'm looking at all of these values here. One thing that I'm going to use is that I know that this whole thing is 50%. So I know I'm not counting then 34% of the 50%. So this is going to be 50% minus 34%, which is 16%. So my answer would be A. Okay, so let me go through then and take us back to kind of our blank. Okay. All right, so number 6 says, the two values representing the endpoints of the middle 95% of the distribution in this particular city. So 95%, if you remember correctly, is within 2 standard deviations. So that's all of this here within 2 standard deviations. So that's 80 to 120. So 80 are approximately. Okay, so if it's approximate of about $10,000, so I want 80 to 120, so my answer is going to be B. 80 to 120. 119.6 is 120. Okay, so then number 7 says, find the z-score for a condominium priced at $115,000 and explain the meaning of this z-score. So our z-score, if you remember, is we take our number, subtract our mean, and divide by our standard deviation. So I'm looking at 115. I'm subtracting my mean of 100, and I want to divide by 10,000. Again, I'm just truncating all of these so that I don't write the thousands. So then I have 15 divided by 10, which would be 1.5 is my z-score. So what that means is that $115,000, that would be 1.5 standard deviations above the mean. That's what your z-score is how many standard deviations above or below, if it was negative, the mean your value is. So that's 1.5 is 1.5 standard deviations above the mean, $115,000. Okay, number 8 then says, find a condominium in this particular city. What price, for a condominium in this particular city, what price is at the 20th percentile? Okay, so 20th percentile would mean, so here's 16th, because it's 16% are at or below that. So percentile is the percent at or below. So my 20th then would be somewhere in here. So it's going to be somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000. So at this point, now I'm going to switch over to my calculator. Okay, so number 8 says, for a condominium in this particular city, what price is at the 20th percentile? So you now know your percentile, you're trying to figure out your z-score. So we want to do inverse normal, which is where we know the percentile, we want to know the actual score. So the area is the percent at or below. So our area is 0.2. Okay, and we're going to go ahead then. We're going to keep this in z-score form, and then we'll go ahead and translate it. So we want to know here, and this is what you might end up putting in if your calculator doesn't ask you those questions like mine. You'll say inverse normal, and then 0.2 is the percent at or below, so 20th would be 0.2. And our mean is 0, and our standard deviation is 1. So we're in a standard normal right now. So we get a z-score of negative 0.84. Okay? So coming back here, I'm going to clear my screen. So if my z-score is negative 0.84, and I'm trying to figure out then my actual number. So I'm trying to figure out my x, and my mean, remember, was $100,000, and my standard deviation is 10. So now I just want to solve for x. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 10. And I get negative 8.4 equals x minus 100, because that canceled out there. So I want to add 100 to both sides. And I get x equals 91.6, I believe. Let me go ahead and check this. Yep, 91.6. So our condominium price would be $91,000. So $91,600 would be our 20th percentile.